Dr. Maya Chen's hands trembled as she carefully measured enzyme samples under the watchful compound eyes of Overseer Krasik. 5 years after the Arxian invasion, she still hadn't grown accustomed to their chitinous exoskeletons or the acrid smell they emitted when agitated. The research facility, once the proud Massachusetts Institute of Technology, now served as just another node in the aliens' vast resource extraction network. Specimen yield insufficient. Krasik chittered, his translator module converting the sounds to flat mechanical English. Explain deviation from expected parameters. Maya kept her eyes down, knowing that direct eye contact was considered a challenge. The human test subjects are undernourished, Overseer. Their cellular regeneration rates are declining from protein deficiency. Across the lab, Dr. Patel dropped a vial of luminescent fluid. The glass shattered against the floor, splashing green liquid across the sterile white tiles. Everyone froze. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as Krasik moved with unsettling grace toward her colleague. Inefficiency, the Arxian stated simply. His upper right limb extended, revealing the metallic harvesting tool they'd all dreaded. Resources wasted require biological compensation. Please, Dr. Patel whispered, backing away. It was an accident. The harvesting tool flashed once. Dr. Patel's body crumpled to the floor, his nervous system instantaneously disrupted. 2 maintenance humans appeared immediately with a disposal cart, faces carefully blank, as they loaded their former colleagues' remains. Continue work sequence, Krasik announced to the room before gliding back to his monitoring station. Maya forced herself to resume measuring samples, her movements mechanical while her mind raced. Tonight. It had to be tonight. The resistance contact had promised an opportunity, and after witnessing Dr. Patel's execution, waiting any longer was unthinkable. 12 hours later, Maya scrubbed caustic residue from her skin in the communal decontamination chamber. The harsh chemicals burned in the small cuts on her hands, but she barely noticed. A thin woman with a janitorial insignia slipped beside her, passing a folded note while pretending to adjust the water pressure. We have a way in, it read. Section C7 Terminal. 200 hours. Distraction required. Maya destroyed the note in the chemical bath and continued her routine, eating her meager protein ration in the workers' hall before retiring to her assigned sleeping pod. She lay awake, counting the minutes until her pod's monitoring light shifted from red to amber, indicating the night cycle's reduced surveillance. At 1:50, she slipped from her pod and made her way through maintenance corridors toward Section C7. The facility never truly slept, but the night shift operated with minimal Arxian supervision. Maya reached the laboratory and quickly assembled components she'd been secretly gathering for weeks: ammonia, phosphorus, and trace metals that, when combined, would create a spectacular but harmless smoke reaction. At precisely 200, she triggered the mixture in a waste disposal chute 3 sections away from her target. Alarms blared almost immediately. Maya counted to 30 before accessing the restricted terminal, her fingers flying across the alien interface she'd studied through countless observation shifts. The classified Arxian schematics appeared on screen: ship designs, communication protocols, and most importantly, neural interface specifications. Maya inserted the crystal storage device she'd modified from repurposed Arxian technology. The download seemed to take forever, progress indicators crawling across the screen while sweat trickled down her spine. Security breach detected in Section D4, announced the facility eye. All personnel remain at stations for scan verification. The terminal beeped softly as the download completed. Maya pocketed the tiny crystal and began erasing evidence of her access when a shadow fell across the door. Without thinking, she swallowed the data crystal whole, wincing as its edges scraped her throat. Human, came the unmistakable dual-tone voice of an Arxian security officer. Identify purpose in restricted area. Maya turned slowly, mind racing for a plausible excuse, knowing that whatever she said, it likely wouldn't matter. The Arxians didn't need much reason to punish humans, But as the security officer raised his neural disruptor, emergency lights suddenly flashed, and the facility's ventilation system engaged emergency protocols in response to the spreading smoke. In the momentary confusion, Maya dove for the ventilation duct she'd loosened earlier, squeezing through the opening as energy pulses shattered equipment behind her. The journey to freedom, and to the resistance, had begun. The data crystal that might save humanity rested in her stomach, and for the first time in 5 years, Maya felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. The maintenance tunnels beneath Seattle had never been designed for permanent habitation. Water dripped from rusting pipes overhead, creating murky puddles across the concrete floor. Commander James Okonkwo studied the maps spread across his makeshift command table, the yellowish glow of salvaged Arxian light strips casting harsh shadows across his face. "Report from Sector 7, his communications officer said, sliding a crumpled note across the table. "They found another survivor. A woman. Says she's a scientist from the MIT research facility." James frowned. "Arxian facilities don't have survivors. They have escapees, and escapees are usually bait." "She's different," the officer insisted. "She was hiding in a drainage culvert, half dead from dehydration. And she had this surgically removed from her own stomach." He placed a tiny crystal on the table, its surface glinting with alien micropatterns. 2 hours later, James stood over a cot where the woman lay recovering, an IV of precious fluids feeding into her arm. The resistance medic had confirmed the crude self-surgery, a jagged scar across her abdomen, where she'd apparently removed the data crystal herself using scavenged medical supplies. "My name is Maya Chen," she said, voice raspy from days without adequate water. "I worked in their primary research division. The crystal contains neural interface schematics." "And why should I believe you aren't sent to infiltrate us?" James asked, arms crossed over his chest. Maya's laugh was hollow. "If the Arxians knew where to find you, they wouldn't waste time with infiltration. They'd just gas these tunnels and be done with it." She struggled to sit up. "Get me components from an Arxian patrol drone. I'll prove what I'm saying." Against his better judgment, James ordered a salvage team to recover parts from a disabled drone they'd been monitoring in the eastern sector. When they returned with the damaged Arxian technology, Maya's eyes lit up with focus despite her weakened state. "Their neural interfaces operate on very specific frequency patterns," she explained, carefully disassembling the drone's sensor array. "It's how they coordinate their hive-like military structure. But the frequencies that strengthen their neural connections," her fingers twisted 2 components together, connecting them to a power cell, "are painful to them," James guessed. Maya shook her head. "Not just painful, devastating." She finished the makeshift device and nodded toward a small container in the corner. "That's a drone diagnostic unit you recovered, yes. It contains an Arxian neural pattern simulator. Turn it on." James activated the alien device, which hummed softly as it generated a simplified version of Arxian neural patterns for equipment testing. Maya aimed her cobbled-together emitter at the diagnostic unit and pressed a sequence of contacts. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The diagnostic unit shrieked with electronic feedback before its circuits violently overloaded, sending sparks shooting across the room. "Imagine what this would do to their actual brains," Maya whispered, eyes reflecting the dying embers of the destroyed Arxian technology. The command center erupted into activity. Engineers began gathering components to replicate Maya's device, while James organized salvage missions to Arxian scrapyards. For the first time, they had a weapon that could actually hurt their oppressors. 3 weeks later, the first full-sized sonic emitter was ready for testing. The resistance gathered in an abandoned subway tunnel, the air thick with anticipation as Maya made final adjustments to the device. "This will change everything," she said, connecting the power supply. The moment of triumph was short-lived. Warning lights flashed across their security perimeter display. Arxian Hunter Squad approaching from the north access tunnel, the sensor operator reported, face pale. They're using new tech, some kind of electrical signature detector. They'll be here in 57 minutes. James looked at the nearly completed weapons, then at his people. We need more time. We don't have it, Maya replied, already disconnecting the sonic emitter. But we have something better. She pointed to the tunnel's ventilation system, a perfect amplification chamber. Understanding dawned on James's face. Everyone, grab what you can carry, he ordered. We're setting a trap. Dawn broke over what remained of Vancouver, pale light filtering through the perpetual haze of industrial pollutants. The massive Archean processing facility dominated the skyline, its alien architecture an affront to the natural beauty that had once defined the region. Maya crouched behind the remains of a collapsed apartment building, carefully positioning the last sonic emitter and sensing it to her control unit. East perimeter secured, she whispered into her communicator, a modified Archean device that operated on frequencies the aliens rarely monitored. Copy that. James responded from his position near the facility's southern entrance. Sewage team is in position. Emitters planted beneath the main processing floor. Maya checked her timer. In exactly 15 minutes, the facility would begin its daily processing cycle. Thousands of human workers would shuffle inside, heads bowed, to spend another day handling toxic Archean materials that slowly poisoned them. Many wouldn't survive the month. None would see another year. This has to work, she murmured to herself, adjusting the final calibrations. The enhanced sonic weapons they'd developed had proven effective against Archean technology, but they hadn't yet tested them against the aliens themselves at this scale. When the massive entrance ports opened and humans began filing into the facility, Maya felt her heart constrict. So many lives depending on what happened in the next few minutes. She watched through micro-binoculars as Archean overseers moved among the workers, their 6 limbs gesturing impatiently, harvesting tools visible as a constant threat. They're all inside, James confirmed, initiating infiltration of control systems. A small team of resistance hackers had spent weeks creating a backdoor into the facility's network. Now they deployed it, temporarily freezing security protocols, while James led his strike team through maintenance ducts and into the facility's communication hub. We're in position, he reported. Ready on your mark. Maya took a deep breath, surveying the facility one last time. This would alert the entire Archean command structure to humanity's new weapon. There would be no going back. Initiating sonic attack in 3, 2, 1. She activated the control unit. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The emitters operated on frequencies human ears couldn't detect. Then, through her binoculars, Maya witnessed something extraordinary. The Archeans inside the facility began to twitch uncontrollably. Their limbs spasmed, their exoskeletons vibrating at resonant frequencies. Throughout the massive complex, the aliens collapsed to the floor, their neural systems overwhelmed by precisely calibrated sonic patterns. It's working, Maya whispered in disbelief. Inside, human workers stood frozen, staring at their fallen overseers. Years of conditioning had taught them that any rebellion meant immediate execution. Now, confronted with the sight of their tormentors helpless before them, they didn't know how to react. A young woman with a back crisscrossed by Archean discipline scars made the first move. She approached a fallen overseer, tentatively reaching for the harvesting tool still clutched in its limb. The workers around her gasped, certain they were about to witness a gruesome revenge. Instead, the woman raised the weapon over her head and smashed it against the floor. "We're better than them," she announced, her voice echoing through the suddenly silent facility. "Help everyone get out." As James and his team secured the communication hub, Maya made her way inside to join them. The human workers were evacuating in orderly lines, helping the injured and elderly among them. Not a single Archean had been killed by the liberated humans, despite years of brutality. In the facility's data center, Maya discovered something that changed everything. Detailed reports about human mental limitation studies sent back to the Archean Empire. She scanned the documents with growing amazement. They never thought we could organize like this, she told James as he joined her. They genuinely believed humans were incapable of coordinated resistance. James gazed at the screens filled with Arxian assessments of human intelligence and potential. That's going to be their downfall, he said quietly. They completely underestimated who they were dealing with. Outside, the first free humans in Vancouver gathered under an open sky, looking back at the facility that had been their prison with bewilderment and growing hope. The first real victory against the Arxians would not be their last. Maya stood transfixed before the holographic star map she had extracted from the Arxian network, her face bathed in the blue glow of countless worlds. The Resistance headquarters had moved twice since the Vancouver victory, now operating from the remains of an underground military bunker in the Rocky Mountains. "We're not alone," she whispered to James as her fingers traced patterns between star systems. "Look at these classification markers. Each color represents a different enslaved species." James leaned closer, counting the highlighted worlds. 11. No, 12 other species under Arxian control. And that's not all. Maya zoomed out, revealing a different set of markers along the outer edges of Arxian territory. These symbols represent something called the Collective, some kind of alliance operating beyond Arxian space. For 3 days, Maya worked without sleep, modifying Arxian communication protocols to match frequencies mentioned in intercepted transmissions between Arxian outposts and collective border worlds. On the 4th day, the modified transmitter picked up a response. The holographic image that appeared before them was unlike anything they had expected, a translucent, tentacled form suspended in what appeared to be a methane atmosphere. "I am Ziv," the entity announced, its translated voice surprisingly melodic. "Intelligence operative, 3rd sphere of collective security. Your transmission method is unexpected from an Arxian-controlled world." "We're not controlled anymore," James replied, stepping forward. "At least not completely. We're fighting back." The alien's appendages rippled in what might have been surprise. "Curious. Your species designation?" "Human," Maya answered. "From Earth." "Ah, humans. Recent acquisition, peripheral value designation." Ziv's form shifted, seeming to consult something outside their view. "Our records indicate total subjugation estimated at 97.3% efficiency. Resistance capability classified as minimal." James laughed darkly. Their assessment was wrong. Ziv studied them for a long moment. "Evidently. Show me your methods." Maya transmitted data on the sonic weapons and their effectiveness against Arxian neural systems. The alien's reaction was immediate. Its entire form pulsated with intense color shifts. "Remarkable approach," Ziv commented. Other subjugated species attempted mass uprisings or diplomatic capitulation. None exploited biological vulnerabilities with such precision. "Will you help us?" James asked directly. "The Collective maintains strict non-intervention protocols regarding Arxian territories," Ziv replied, its colors dimming. "However, unofficial intelligence sharing falls within my operational discretion." The connection ended with coordinates for future transmissions and encryption protocols that would evade Arxian detection. It wasn't the direct military support James had hoped for, but it was a beginning. Humanity's first extraterrestrial alliance. Meanwhile, resistance activities accelerated across the continent. Using captured Arxian transport pods, fighters struck outposts from Montreal to Mexico City, vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Each successful mission yielded more technology and intelligence. In Nevada, resistance forces liberated a high-security facility that turned out to be a prison camp housing both humans and several non-human slaves from distant worlds. A reptilian prisoner named Salith, whose scaled hide bore marks of years of Arxian experimentation, provided crucial information about Arxian physiology that helped Maya refine the sonic weapons. "The vibration frequency of their 3rd neural cluster," Salith explained, pointing to diagrams Maya had compiled. "It is most vulnerable during their rest cycle." The Arxian response grew increasingly desperate. Hunter-killer drones programmed to target human brain patterns now patrol major cities, forcing resistance operatives to develop countermeasures involving chaotic thought patterns induced through specialized training. As James coordinated the growing global network of resistance cells, reports arrived from Europe, Asia, and Africa. Everywhere, humans were rising against their oppressors, adapting Maya's sonic weapon designs to local materials. "We're winning," he told Maya one night as they reviewed the latest intelligence. They never expected this level of coordination. His celebration was cut short when alarms blared throughout the bunker. The surveillance system displayed a new Arxian deployment. Massive atmospheric craft releasing clouds of nanite hunters designed to infiltrate hidden facilities. "They're evolving their tactics," Maya observed grimly, "which means we need to evolve faster." High Commander Zextrol stood before the curved holographic displays of the Tokyo Command Center, his secondary limbs twitching with barely contained fury. The public execution of captured resistance fighters was meant to crush the human rebellion. Instead, it had become a catastrophe broadcasted throughout the Arxian Empire and beyond. "Replay the security feed," he ordered, his voice modulator barely containing the clicking undertones of rage. The display showed the execution arena where 12 captured humans knelt in chains. Arxian officials had arranged for the event to be transmitted to all processing facilities on Earth as a warning. Then, just as the execution was to begin, hidden sonic emitters activated simultaneously. The footage showed Arxian authorities convulsing, their neural systems overwhelmed, while their human captives escaped with surprising coordination. The transmission continued for 17 minutes before our technicians could terminate it, an aide reported nervously. It reached all Earth facilities and several orbital communication relays. Beyond our territory, Zextrol's eye membranes contracted to pinpoints. "We believe the collective intercepted the broadcast, Commander." In the Resistance headquarters, Maya worked alongside 2 collective engineers who had arrived secretly aboard a stealth vessel disguised as orbital debris. They had brought advanced technology and materials that allowed her team to miniaturize the sonic weapons into devices small enough to be hidden in clothing. "The modulation circuit requires a crystalline substrate," explained Kileth, a 6-eyed being with translucent skin that revealed shifting internal organs. "Your planet's silicon-based components are too unstable at these frequencies." Maya carefully inserted the alien crystal into a prototype wrist emitter. "With these, our fighters won't need to plant stationary devices. They can move freely through Arxian-controlled areas." Across the room, James conducted a global command briefing via secured communications. Resistance leaders from Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia reported increasing success against Arxian outposts. "London Cell has liberated 3 processing facilities," reported a British commander. "We're seeing something unexpected. Arxian workers are beginning to abandon posts rather than face our weapons." James nodded. "Same in Buenos Aires and Johannesburg. They're losing confidence." The briefing was interrupted when proximity sensors triggered throughout the base. Maya rushed to the monitoring station, where surveillance feeds showed something alarming. Swarms of atmospheric probes converging on Seattle's underground network. Chemical signatures detected. The sensor operator reported. "They're preparing a massive gas attack on the tunnel system." James immediately activated the emergency evacuation protocol, but Maya placed a hand on his arm. "Wait, we received intelligence about this 3 days ago." She turned to the communications officer. "Connect me with Operative Phoenix." A video feed opened, showing an Arxian scientist whose characteristic plating had been partially removed and replaced with grafted materials. "The attack proceeds as predicted," the defector stated. "All hunter squads have been deployed to the tunnel network." "And our countermeasure?" Maya asked. "In place. Automated systems only, as requested." James watched the Seattle tunnels on the monitor as Arxian forces breached the outer perimeters, deploying neural gas into the seemingly abandoned resistance stronghold. When the gas reached the central chambers, It triggered the automated sonic emitters Maya had left behind. The effect was devastating. Dozens of Arxian soldiers collapsed instantly, their neural systems overloaded by the precisely calibrated frequencies. "Your trap was effective," the defector noted with clinical detachment. But more concerning information has emerged. The Arxian High Command has determined that conventional subjugation of humans is no longer viable. "What does that mean?" James demanded. "They have requested planet-killing weapons from the homeworld," the defector replied. "The extinction protocols have been activated." Maya's blood ran cold. "How long do we have?" "The weapons will arrive within 14 solar cycles." James looked at the assembled resistance leaders on the monitors. 2 weeks to save our species. We need to accelerate the timetable." "No," Maya said quietly. "An idea forming. We need to make them accelerate theirs." She turned to the collective engineers. "How good is your species at signal manipulation?" Kaleth's skin rippled with chromatic patterns that suggested interest. "The best in the known galaxy. What do you have in mind?" "Something they'll never expect," Maya answered. "We're going to start a galactic rebellion." "Arxian reinforcements are incoming," Maya announced, projecting intercepted transmission data onto the command center's main display. 3 destroyer-class vessels carrying specialized suppression units. Arrival in 7 days. James studied the projected flight paths with growing concern. "Even with our sonic weapons, we can't defend against that level of firepower. We need more time to evacuate the major resistance hubs." "We don't need more time," Maya replied, her expression shifting to one James had come to recognize, the look she got when planning something either brilliant or suicidal. "We need to make them change course." The plan she outlined was so audacious that even the collective engineers exchanged skeptical glances. Using captured Arxian communication arrays and translation algorithms provided by their allies, Maya proposed creating phantom distress calls from multiple Arxian colonies throughout the Empire. "The Arxians maintain minimal defensive forces at their established colonies," she explained. "Their military doctrine relies on rapid response to threats rather than permanent garrisons. If they believe several worlds are experiencing simultaneous slave uprisings, they'll divert ships," James finished, beginning to understand. "But can we make it convincing enough?" Kaleth, the collective engineer, manipulated a series of holographic controls with his elongated digits. "We have extensive linguistic analysis of Arxian military communications. With the proper signal encryption and positional data, the deception could succeed." For 3 days, they worked without rest, crafting meticulously detailed distress calls from 6 Arxian colony worlds. Each message described coordinated slave revolts inspired by news of human resistance on Earth, with details specific to each world's enslaved population. The Trellix on Arxian mining world Kolvazar would target atmospheric processors first, advised Salith, the reptilian former prisoner. Include that detail for authenticity. When the false transmissions were deployed through captured relay stations, the effect was immediate. Long-range sensors detected the 3 Arxian destroyers changing course, diverting to protect valuable resource extraction operations threatened by the phantom uprisings. "It worked," James breathed, watching the enemy ships altering their trajectories on the display. Now for Phase 2. While the Arxians diverted their reinforcements, resistance cells worldwide launched synchronized attacks on command centers. James led the assault on the North American headquarters, an imposing structure built into the ancient pyramid at Teotihuacan outside Mexico City. The fighting was intense. Even with wrist-mounted sonic weapons, the resistance fighters faced deadly energy weapons and automated defense systems. They fought room by room, corridor by corridor, taking heavy casualties, but pushing inexorably toward the command center. "Upper level secured," reported a blood-spattered lieutenant, "but they've locked down the central command module." James nodded grimly. "Deploy the breaching charges." When the reinforced doors finally collapsed, James led the assault team into a circular chamber where a single Arxian commander remained, surrounded by the bodies of subordinates who had taken their own lives rather than face capture. "You have violated all established behavioral parameters," the Arxian stated, its translator producing flawlessly aristocratic English. "Inferior species do not successfully rebel." "Maybe you should update your parameters," James replied, motioning for his team to secure the alien. The Arxian's secondary limbs twitched in what might have been confusion. "You do not execute me immediately." "Illogical. Our protocols require the elimination of captured enemy leadership." "That's not our way," James said simply. "We need information, and killing prisoners isn't what we do." The intelligence they extracted from the captured command center proved more valuable than the victory itself. Through interrogation of the Arxian commander and analysis of secured data cores, they discovered the full extent of the aliens' plans. "They're terrified of us," Maya said, reviewing the findings. According to these reports, the Arxian leadership determined that humanity's adaptive capabilities pose an unprecedented threat to their dominance paradigm. "So they were planning to sterilize our entire population," James added, his voice tight with controlled rage. "A species-wide genetic modification to render all humans infertile within 1 generation." The captured Arxian commander observed their reactions with scientific detachment, a logical solution to maintain resource extraction while eliminating future threat potential. Maya turned to face the alien. "You still don't understand, do you? That's exactly the kind of thinking that guaranteed you'd lose this war." As reports of successful attacks streamed in from around the globe, James updated the resistance leadership on their discovery. "We're no longer fighting just for freedom," he told them. "We're fighting for humanity's very future." Maya, meanwhile, transmitted the intelligence to their collective contacts. "The extinction threat has accelerated," she explained to Ziv. "We need more than intelligence sharing now. We need direct intervention." Ziv's translucent form rippled with chromatic patterns suggesting internal conflict. "This evidence may be sufficient to justify limited collective action. I will present your case to the Council." As the transmission ended, Maya and James exchanged a look that carried equal parts hope and determination. The countdown to Earth's destruction continued, but for the first time, they weren't facing it alone. Operation Thunderclap began during an electrical storm that swept across the European continent, providing natural cover against Arxian atmospheric sensors. Maya checked the final calibrations on her enhanced sonic weapon, now elegantly miniaturized into a wrist-mounted device that could target specific neural clusters in Arxian brains with devastating precision. "All teams report ready," James confirmed, his voice tense but steady over the secure communication network. "Asian and African strike forces are in position. Oceania teams have already disabled perimeter defenses at the Sydney command post." Maya nodded, watching real-time tactical displays in the mobile command center they'd established in the Alps. "And our orbital support." As if in answer, the communications officer straightened suddenly. "Incoming transmission from Collective Vanguard. They've committed 7 vessels to engage Arxian ships in orbit." After reviewing the evidence of planned human genocide, the Collective Council had finally authorized direct intervention, limited in scope but crucial in timing. Their technologically superior ships, though few in number, would prevent Arxian orbital bombardment during the ground offensive. "All resistance cells, commence Operation Thunderclap," James ordered, his voice reaching fighters across the globe. "May we all meet again in a free world." The synchronized assault targeted every major Arxian installation on Earth simultaneously. In abandoned subway tunnels beneath Tokyo, resistance fighters deployed sonic weapons against the Eastern Command Center. Across Africa, teams struck mining operations from Cairo to Cape Town. In the Americas, thousands of humans who had trained in secret for this moment emerged to reclaim their cities. The fighting was fiercest at the Arxian Supreme Headquarters in Geneva, where the aliens had concentrated their elite guard units. James led the European strike force personally, coordinating with Maya through a neural link developed by collective technicians. "Northern sector secured," he reported as his team pushed through the ornate structure that had once housed human diplomatic efforts. "Heavy resistance at the central command hub." Maya monitored his progress while coordinating global operations. Be careful. Our intelligence suggests they've modified their neural structures to resist standard sonic frequencies. Her warning came just in time. As James's team breached the central security corridor, they encountered Arxian guards wearing protective headgear that neutralized their sonic weapons effects. Adapting frequency pattern, Maya transmitted, remotely adjusting James's weapon parameters. Triharmonic sequence delta. The modified weapons proved effective, but at a cost. The close quarters fighting turned brutal as humans and Arxians clashed in narrow corridors. A young resistance fighter named Carlos saved James from an ambush, pushing him aside as an Arxian energy weapon discharged. The blast took Carlos's left arm at the shoulder, cauterizing the wound instantly. Get him to medical, James ordered before pressing forward with his remaining team. Room by room, they fought their way to the central command chamber. When they finally breached the massive doors, they found High Commander Zextrol surrounded by communication arrays, his limbs working frantically across control interfaces. The emergency protocols are already activated, the Arxian announced without turning. This facility will self-destruct in approximately 3 minutes. My species may lose Earth, but your victory will be hollow. Maya's voice came urgently through James's communicator. He's activated a dead man switch tied to explosives throughout the facility. I'm attempting to override remotely. James kept his weapon trained on the Arxian commander. Surrender now, and your people will be treated humanely. We're not like you. Zextrol's translator emitted what might have been a laugh. Your species continues to perplex our behavioral analysts. Why offer mercy to those who would show none? Because that's what makes us human, James answered simply. The commander turned, revealing a neural disruptor pressed against his primary nerve cluster. Your triumph is unexpected, but ultimately irrelevant. The Arxian Empire spans hundreds of worlds. This defeat is merely an anomaly. Before James could respond, Maya's voice came through with triumph. Detonation sequence neutralized. I've bypassed his authorization using algorithms developed with collective assistance. Surrounded by human fighters, with his final gambit failed, Zextrol made his choice. The neural disruptor activated with a soft pulse, instantly severing the connections in his brain. As the Arxian commander collapsed, James noticed something unexpected. A resistance medic had already rushed forward, attempting to stabilize the dying alien. Even now, you show compassion. Zextrol's voice emerged weakly from his translator as neural disruption spread through his system. That's what you never understood about us, James replied, watching the medic work frantically to save an enemy who would have exterminated their entire species without hesitation. The medic looked up and shook his head. The High Commander was gone. Outside the facility, James emerged to news of victory after victory. Across the world, Arxian forces were surrendering or retreating to orbital extraction points. In space, collective ships had disabled the Arxian fleet without destroying it, a demonstration of both power and restraint. As the sun set on humanity's first truly free day in 5 years, James found Maya standing alone, watching the stars become visible above the Alps. We did it, he said simply. No, she corrected him with a tired smile. Humanity did it, all of us together. 6 months after Liberation Day, the transformed skyline of New Geneva gleamed with a fusion of human and alien architecture. Maya walked through the newly established Earth Science Directorate, where human engineers worked alongside collective advisors and even a handful of Arxian defectors who had chosen to remain on Earth rather than return to their empire. The atmospheric processors have reduced toxicity levels by 68%, reported Dr. Nishimura, leading Maya through a laboratory where reclaimed Arxian technology was being repurposed to heal the environmental damage from the occupation. At this rate, pre-invasion air quality will be restored within 18 months. Maya nodded approvingly, and the medical applications, even more promising. Dr. Nishimura gestured to a neighboring lab, where collective medical technology was being adapted for human physiology. Cancer treatments derived from Arxian cellular regeneration techniques have shown 97% efficacy in clinical trials. We're essentially curing diseases that were terminal just months ago. The rapid technological advancement wasn't limited to Earth. In orbit, the first human-designed interstellar vessel was nearing completion, incorporating both salvage Arxian technology and innovations contributed by collective engineers impressed by human creativity. That evening, Maya met James at the newly constructed council hall where Earth's diplomatic corps was preparing for humanity's formal admission to the collective. James, now serving as Earth's principal representative, looked almost uncomfortable in his ceremonial attire. "I still think you should be doing this," he told Maya as they reviewed the admission protocols. "You're the one who made first contact." Maya shook her head. "You united the resistance cells into a global force. Besides, I'm more useful in the labs than in diplomatic functions." "Speaking of which," James said, producing a small data crystal, "the Collective Council sent this. They've approved your request for access to their xenobiology archives." Maya's eyes widened as she accepted the crystal. With access to the Collective's scientific database, human medical advancement would accelerate exponentially. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia could be eliminated within a generation. The next day, representatives from 23 collective species gathered aboard a massive crystalline vessel in Earth orbit for the admission ceremony. As human delegates entered the Great Chamber, they were greeted by beings of astonishing diversity. Crystalline entities that communicated through light patterns, methane-breathing arthropods, sentient plant collectives, and species defying easy description. The council speaker, a luminescent being whose form constantly shifted between solid and energy states, formally addressed the assembly. "In all our records, spanning 17,000 cycles, no species has ever liberated itself from Arxian dominion without external military intervention." The speaker's translated voice resonated through the chamber. "Humanity has demonstrated exceptional resilience, ingenuity, and a moral fortitude that will strengthen our shared community." As Earth was formally recognized as the newest member of the collective, sensors detected a small Arxian diplomatic vessel requesting permission to approach. The Empire, facing rebellions on multiple worlds inspired by Earth's example, had sent representatives to establish formal relations with their former slaves, now elevated to galactic citizens. 1 week later, Earth's first interstellar embassy vessel prepared for its maiden voyage to the collective's central worlds. Maya stood on the observation deck with James, watching their blue planet recede as the ship accelerated toward the jump point. "Do you think we're ready for this?" she asked, a rare moment of uncertainty crossing her face. "Just months ago, we were fighting for survival, and now we're taking our place among the stars." A rehabilitated Arxian scientist named Krell, who had been working nearby calibrating navigation sensors, paused in his work. "Your species was ready long before we arrived," he said quietly. "That is what frightened us most." The final diplomatic mission briefing was interrupted by news from Earth. The first integrated school had opened in former Vancouver, where human children now learned alongside the offspring of other species, including young Arxians orphaned by the war. Their teacher, the scared woman named Sasha who had chosen mercy during the facility liberation, sent a video message showing her diverse class studying stellar cartography. As Maya watched the transmission, she noticed the galactic map displayed in the classroom. The boundaries of the once mighty Arxian Empire were visibly receding as world after world followed Earth's example. The liberation that had begun on a single blue planet was spreading across the stars, sparked by a species that had faced extinction yet emerged not with vengeance, but with vision. "That's our real victory," James said softly, watching the children of former enemies learning together. "Not defeating the Arxians, but building something better than what came before." Maya nodded, turning her gaze toward the vast expanse of stars stretching before their ship. Humanity had survived its first contact with a hostile cosmos, not just through resistance, but through persistence, ingenuity, and ultimately compassion. The future stretching before them contained challenges yet unimagined, But after all they had overcome, those challenges held no terror, only promise.